Special Sunday Artists. I'm Ann Cummings and I call myself an eco artist, and I'm going to do a project with you that is called doing an eco art color wheel. And the reason that it's called eco art is because eco art is any kind of an art form that you do where you think about what kind of materials you're using and what kind of impact it might have on the environment. And when you use some certain kinds of art materials, you have to stop and think about that. Like, am I using plastics, like acrylic paint, or things that have certain pigments in them that might be not so great for the outdoors or for water or for air. And we're doing this because right now there's lots of white around in our world after having a big snowstorm this week. You know what I mean? And we're going to really focus on color. So color is everywhere, and I'm sure you can find some things in your home that you can add to this project that will make it even more colorful. But I'm giving you a kit that is going to have lots of things to get you started and a wheel to get started with. Now, I'm just going to give you a quick idea from some of the things that I do in my studio, what kinds of things you can do for eco art. For instance, I take a lot of old bottles and boxes and I cover them with all kinds of images that I find in very cool old magazines and things. So that's an example of eco art. I also make one-of-a-kind artworks that then I turn into clocks. And again, it's all just from recycled things like canvas and magazine pictures. And then I use a little bit of recycled metallic paint. And when I say recycled, I used to be an art teacher at a high school in Colchester, and so I use a lot of materials that are sometimes just left over in my classroom. I'm not a full-time art teacher in a public school anymore, but now I'm doing things like this with kids who are at home. So I'm gonna get you started with laying out your materials, okay? So to start with, I'd like you to get out the handout that I gave you and take a look at the kind of cool eco art color wheels there. An example of a really amazing piece of eco art that was done out of all recycled ocean plastics, one made out of all natural materials. So these kind of give you some idea of what eco artists do in the world out there, and there are quite a few of them around these days. And then the second page here gives you the step-by-step instructions and a little bit about color in general. I'm hoping that some of you have a little bit of background in making things with color, but just in case this is kind of new to you, it would really be good to look through the things here about the primary colors, which are blue, red, and yellow, and the secondary colors, which are purple, sometimes called violet, but we're going to go by purple, and green and orange. And then there are colors in between those, and there are actually like limitless, infinite numbers of colors, but they really all fall somewhere within these, okay? It's just that you can divide them into tons of little tiny sections in between. But we call those the tertiary colors, and that's just a fancy word for in between. And they are named just like the colors. So it would be like yellow orange, blue green, red purple, etc. Okay? So secondary colors are just a combination of any two primary colors. Tertiary colors are a combination of a primary and a secondary color. So that's the real basic stuff. So what you can do if you want to is go a little bit further into tints, tones, and shades of colors, which that's when it starts to get really exciting and really challenging, because tints is anytime you add white to a color. And another name for a basic color is the hue. So sometimes artists talk about it that way. So we've got a tint, and then if you add gray, which is a combination of black and white, you get a tone. So that would be like if you want to make a color just a little more toned down, not quite so bright, you would make it by adding gray. And then shade is when you add black. So if you want to really challenge yourself, and you can do this with your color wheel that I gave you, which will be the next step that we'll go to, you'll see I divided it all up for you. You can add those tertiary colors in there all by yourself just by drawing some extra lines, but you don't have to, because it will kind of happen naturally all by itself as we get going. Okay, so getting back to the actual step-by-step here, the very first thing that you need to do is just clean off a surface to work on, and you might want to cover it with paper. So I have some sheets of scrap paper here that I'm using, and I'm just going to lay them out to use as I work so that I don't get glue all over my work table. So whatever you might have, newspaper, any kind of old paper, even a cloth would be fine, an old towel. So then you would want to lay out your color wheel, and then with a pencil, you'll want to mark the colors on your color wheel. You can start anywhere you want and use this to help you out, okay? So you want those primary colors to be any three, and I marked this for the primaries and the secondaries. So if I wanted this to be red, then over here can be yellow, and here would be blue, okay? Because they're always in sort of a triangle. And then in between red and blue, think about it yourself, but I bet you already know that it is purple when you mix red and blue together. Blue and yellow, you would get green. And then red and yellow, you would get orange. So it's a good idea to just mark these and make absolutely sure that you're getting them in the right relationship to each other. Otherwise, your color wheel is not going to come out looking like these sample ones here with all the colors in the right rainbow kind of collection together. Okay? The next step is to take all these delicious fabrics and papers and start dividing them up into categories. So everything that I'm seeing here that looks mostly, that's kind of a yellow-green. I'm going to put it there. Here's green and blue. So anything that looks mostly one color, set it in a pile. Now, something like this has lots of little colors in it. I might want them for separate sections, and I might want to cut them apart. So I'm going to lay that one aside for right now and use that as I go. Here's a very light, this would be a tint of red, which we also tend to call pink. But I'm going to put that with my red pile. Here's some blue. You'll notice these have lots of different, some of them have patterns on them. They have different feels to them. That would be the textures. So this will have a lot of kind of cool textures to it also. There's a red, go with the red pile over here. This one has lots of stuff, so I'm going to lay it in the pile with different things. Now, I forgot to add that you can kind of gather up the other things you'll need before you get started, or you can look for them later. You're going to want a pretty good pair of scissors, whatever you have that you think will cut fabric pretty well. So I have a little pair because they're much easier for little hands, or I have a big pair that's more like sewing scissors. So ask your parents for help if you need some help cutting anything, because some of these fabrics they have a little bit of kind of a thick texture. Some of these were made like to go on furniture, and they're all kinds of different things. Now, also, this is where you could look around your house and see if you have any other things that you think would look kind of cool to go with it. Okay, so at this point, I've got most of my fabrics laid out, and I'm going to just kind of walk you through one color section. I'm back. So to save a little video time, I did some cutting and arranging here with my red colors. And I'll tell you what I did. I can still walk you through what I actually went through. I used my sort of sharper fabric sewing scissors because they just are a lot easier to work with. But I ended up deciding, since we're the day after Valentine's Day, that I would go ahead and put some heart shapes in there. I'm guessing you guys probably already know how to cut a heart shape, but folding my fabric in half, I would just start at the top, make a great big swoop around curve, and then come in and make it kind of pointed at the bottom. And then I should have a heart. So I might add this heart to what I already arranged here, but that would be your next step, is choose one color area to start with and start arranging pieces. And remember, this can be very abstract. Abstract art is when it doesn't have to look like anything. You just do what you kind of feel like, okay? And I ended up with some extra scraps from the pieces I cut, and I may end up deciding to add some of those. Now, once you have everything laid down, you can do this in a couple of different ways. By the way, I like using a brush with my pot of glue. So I'm going to, by the way, also I'd like to point out that I decided to go with sort of a tint and then tones with the hue, the basic hue right there in the middle, and then with the darker, sort of maroon, darker reds around the outside. So one way I could do this now is to kind of move things aside a little bit as I work and put my glue down right in that section. And then I would take my little piece of fabric and lay it down where I want it. And then I can even put glue on top of it, because with fabric, it will soak right in there, and when it dries, it will be really pretty permanent on the surface of this cardboard. And I think I'm going to go ahead and finish mine too, because it really is kind of a fun, very kind of simple project, and they end up looking so cool with all these beautiful colors all together. Here's how mine came out, and it got all dry overnight, so then I flipped it over on the back and cut around the edges just to get all the little extra pieces of fabric off. And yours already say this on the back. Yours should say Eco Art Color Wheel created by, so you can put your name and you can put the date that you finished it, okay? Just like the way most artists sign their work. What I really liked about the way that mine came out is that in each one I tried to kind of use a little bit of a theme. So I did a heart, a flower, I've got the leaf for the green over here, I did waves, more flowers in the purple part, and the yellow. So see if you can come up with maybe some interesting shapes, interesting themes for your own. But mostly it's all about just learning about colors and learning about how you can use recycled materials to make really amazing, beautiful art. So I hope you enjoy this project. And if you feel like doing an eco art collage based on landscapes, that'll be for next week. Take care. See you later. Bye.